Snow drifted lazily across Varos 9's frozen pines as the alien platoon marched in tense formation. They had been promised reinforcements, yet none expected the lone human veteran assigned to guide them. Sergeant Elias Ward emerged from the transport with the unhurried gait of someone who had seen war reshape entire worlds. His armor looked older than most of the squad, its plating scarred, repaired, and worn to a muted gray. The alien soldiers exchanged glances that mixed disappointment with a quiet, uneasy curiosity. They had expected sophisticated equipment and cutting-edge weapons, not a man carrying a heavy, outdated case across the snow. Rythis, the team's sharp-tongued, scary scout, muttered that humans relied more on grit than intelligence. Kor, a meticulous Threxian marksman, studied Elias longer, tried to decipher whether age or confidence shaped his calm. Two hulking Vril gunners trudged behind the group, their deep voices vibrating with quiet amusement at the unexpected arrival. The squad's mission demanded precision, yet uncertainty pressed against them like the cold threading through their armor. Something enormous had begun stalking the eastern ridge, leaving crushed metal, shattered trees, and missing patrols in its wake. Plasma fire scarcely slowed the creature, and fear coiled through every report sent back to command. Kor approached Elias cautiously, asking whether he had read the brief. Elias nodded once, his calm expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. When the squad halted beside a frozen ravine, Elias set down the long case with deliberate care. The aliens gathered, expecting advanced weaponry or unfamiliar technology. Elias opened the case to reveal a massive, rugged rifle forged from steel, polymer, and unapologetic simplicity. The weapon looked ancient compared to their plasma rifles, and their skepticism sharpened instantly. Rythis scoffed openly, asking why anyone would carry a relic instead of modern armaments. Elias only wiped frost from the rifle's barrel and answered that the creature ahead cared little for aesthetics. His voice lacked bravado. It held the weight of a man who understood what the squad did not. The wind shifted abruptly, carrying a distant rumble that vibrated along the ridge. The squad checked their scanners, but the screens flickered with static, overwhelmed by whatever approached. Elias closed the rifle case halfway, leaving the weapon ready, and motioned for the squad to tighten formation. His movements were efficient, practiced, and free of hesitation, revealing a discipline forged long before this mission. Rythis, observing him closely, found his earlier mockery losing its foundation. Kor noted the subtle calculation in Elias's gaze, the way he tracked the shifting snow with precise attention. Even the Vril gunners straightened, sensing that the human's poise meant more than outdated equipment. The rumble grew stronger, rolling under their feet with the steady intent of something vast and territorial. Elias stepped forward, gripping the rifle's handle, and told the squad to stay alert because the hunt had already begun. Snow drifted from the trees as the unseen creature pushed closer, its approach measured yet unmistakably predatory. The squad tightened their formation, instincts sharpening beneath the crushing weight of anticipation. Elias lifted his gaze toward the darkened forest, his expression revealing not fear, but readiness shaped by experience. The ridge felt impossibly still, as though the entire wilderness paused to witness the moment before violence erupted. The squad looked to Elias, realizing that his calm was not ignorance, but preparation for something they could barely imagine. A final distant crack echoed across the ravine, and Elias reached for the rifle, signaling that the moment to doubt had passed. Whatever approached would test their skill, and Elias intended for their continued survival. The squad resumed its advance along the ridge, but their earlier swagger had thinned, replaced by sidelong looks toward Elias, as though he carried not just an old weapon, but an unspoken warning. Snow clung to their armor as the wind picked up, rattling branches overhead and making every soldier tighten their grip on their rifles. A scary scout named Rythis finally broke the silence, his voice carrying a practiced arrogance. "That contraption of yours looks ready to collapse under its own weight." Plasma would serve us better than metal lumps. Elias didn't rise to the bait. He simply adjusted the strap of the case on his back and trudged forward, leaving Rythis blinking in irritation. The Threxian marksman, Kor, clicked in amusement, only to fall quiet when Elias spoke. "It's not the weight of the weapon that matters," Elias said, his tone level but edged with realism. "It's the weight of the problem it needs to solve." The remark drew a puzzled stare from the Vril gunners, who exchanged a silent conversation through brief gestures. Elias's calm certainty unsettled them more than any boast could have. They paused beside a cluster of frost-hardened boulders as their scanners flickered with interference. The squad formed a semicircle, weapons angled into the trees while Elias knelt and brushed snow from a jagged indentation in the ground. His gloved fingers traced the frozen imprint, broad, deep, and lined with gouges where weight had crushed ice into powder. The others leaned closer, and even their confident facades wavered. Something massive had passed through here recently, and it had not been in a hurry. Rythis tried to mask his unease with another jab. "Your antique isn't going to impress whatever made that." Elias stood, meeting the scout's gaze with a steadiness born not of defiance but experience. "This thing isn't here to be impressed," he said. "It's here to kill us if we aren't ready." The blunt honesty made Rythis swallow his retort, and even Kor shifted uncomfortably, mandibles twitching as he scanned the treeline again. Elias motioned for them to spread out, directing the squad with an authority that softened their mockery into reluctant respect. His commands were concise, practical, and tailored to their strengths. He positioned Kor on higher ground, set the Vril gunners behind natural cover, and instructed Rythis to monitor motion patterns rather than rely on unreliable scanners. His understanding of their proficiency surprised them, and his attentiveness, sharp, immediate, and tactical, began to nudge their distrust into something more complicated. A low rumble shivered through the snow, faint but unmistakable, like distant thunder muffled by forest. Every soldier froze. Even the wind seemed to pause. The rumble returned, stronger this time, followed by a creaking groan of ice shifting under immense pressure. Elias lowered himself to one knee and finally opened the long case fully, exposing the metallic giant of a weapon beneath. The squad watched, transfixed, as he fed the heavy belt of ammunition into the mechanism with deliberate care. The weapon wasn't elegant. It was purposeful, unapologetically built for a singular task. Kor leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you call that thing?" Elias locked the final latch and settled the rifle against the ground. "A solution," he replied. The simplicity of the answer made several soldiers glance nervously toward the forest, as though the word itself carried weight. The rumbling grew louder, rolling across the ridge and sending a tremor through the snow beneath their boots. Shapes moved between the trees, too large, too heavy, too deliberate to be the wind. Elias steadied the rifle on its bipod and spoke without raising his voice. "Positions. Whatever's coming, it's almost on us." The squad obeyed, no longer because he outranked them, but because something in his conviction left no room for argument. And as the shadows stretched between the trees, each soldier realized that the old human's confidence wasn't bravado. It was preparation for a threat he understood far better than they did. The first shadow broke from the treeline with a force that sent snow billowing upward, as though the forest itself exhaled in terror. Branches snapped beneath the creature's weight, scattering splinters across the ridge. The soldiers tensed, their armor humming softly as targeting systems flickered to life. Elias didn't look at the approaching monster. He watched the squad instead, gauging their resolve, noting who steadied their breathing and who nearly faltered. Fear, he knew, sharpened some fighters and shattered others. He needed them sharp. The beast lumbered fully into view, its massive frame plated in layered chitin that shimmered with a faint iridescence. Each step left a crater in the snow, and its breath steamed in thick clouds from a maw lined with jagged, ice-crusted teeth. Thermal vents along its torso glowed with dull amber light, radiating the heat it siphoned from plasma fire. heat it would gladly weaponize against those who dared shoot at it. The squad had seen sketches and heard reports, but nothing captured the presence of such a creature in motion. It was a walking calamity, and their rifles suddenly felt small. Core shattered the paralysis first, unleashing a burst of plasma that streaked harmlessly across the creature's flank. The shot left a bright smear of evaporated frost, but the monster barely twitched, as though a snowflake had grazed its armor. Rythis followed, firing a rapid succession of blasts that dissolved into harmless glimmers against the chitin plates. A low vibration rumbled through the air, something between a growl and the groan of shifting earth. The beast turned its single massive eye toward the source of the plasma fire, and the squad felt dread coil in their guts. Elias quietly adjusted the bipod of his anti-tank rifle, aligning the barrel with practiced calm. While the others scrambled for cover, he watched the beast's movements with clinical precision. It swiveled its massive head, revealing a narrow seam of softer tissue between overlapping plates. He waited, slowing his breathing, counting the creature's steps. Timing mattered. Panic would mean death. The monster lunged toward Core, its clawed forelimb smashing into the snow with explosive force. The Threxian dove aside, but the shockwave sent him skidding across the ice. Rythis shouted a warning, firing again despite the futility, more out of instinct than strategy. Elias exhaled once and squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report cracked across the ridge like thunder, echoing through the trees. Snow erupted around Elias as the recoil drove him into the ground, but his posture held firm. The colossal round tore through the air, piercing the seam in the creature's armor with a spray of dark ichor. The beast jerked backward, stunned by a sensation it had never experienced. True, devastating injury. It staggered, bellowing with a fury that made the air tremble. Elias chambered another round with swift, deliberate motion. "Stay down," he called, his voice cutting through the chaos. The squad obeyed without hesitation this time, their earlier skepticism replaced by raw, startled trust. The creature turned toward Elias, lowering its body into a charging stance. Snow churned beneath its feet as it gathered momentum. The second shot landed deep in its chest, pulverizing internal structures with kinetic force that shattered chitin and bone alike. The beast collapsed mid-stride, sliding across the snow in a violent heap until it lay motionless, steam rising from its ruined armor. For several breaths, no one moved. The forest, moments ago filled with brutal noise, returned to its eerie stillness. Core slowly rose, brushing snow from his armor as he stared at the fallen titan. Rythis approached Elias with uncharacteristic hesitation, his earlier bravado replaced by something closer to awe. The vril gunners exchanged glances that reflected a dawning understanding. The old human had not exaggerated, nor clung to outdated traditions. He had brought exactly what the situation demanded. Elias didn't bask in their admiration. He simply reloaded, eyes scanning the tree-line as another faint tremor rippled through the ground. The first beast had been hunting alone. The next one would not. The tremor pulsed through the ridge with a deliberate rhythm, as though something beneath the snowline knocked on the world itself. The squad clustered instinctively around Elias, no longer out of skepticism or protocol, but because his presence steadied them in a way their rifles could not. The fallen beast steamed beside them, its titanic frame a brutal reminder that survival was possible, but never guaranteed. Though the air bit at their lungs, none dared move until Elias finally rose from behind the rifle and scanned the tree-line with a measured calm that bordered on unsettling. Core approached first, mandibles clicking in restrained disbelief. "You killed it," he murmured, as though the truth struggled to fit inside the words. Elias didn't answer immediately. He swept his gaze across the forest, searching for patterns in the drifting snow and the faint vibrations climbing through his boots. Only once he finished assessing their surroundings did he acknowledge the Threxian. "One," he said, "but the ridge doesn't shake because of one." His tone carried neither fear nor bravado, only the solid conviction of someone who understood exactly what waited beyond the trees. Rythis stepped closer, his earlier arrogance dissolved into something far more earnest. "Teach us," he said. "Whatever you know, we need it." Elias regarded him with a faint nod, appreciating the shift, but knowing urgency allowed little room for reflection. "First lesson," he replied, "you don't outrun what's coming. You outthink it. So spread out. Keep lines of fire open, keep your nerves steady, and don't waste a shot on armor meant to mock you." The squad obeyed instantly, their movements sharper, more deliberate, no longer hindered by doubt. The forest trembled again, this time accompanied by a distant crack that reverberated through frozen trunks. Elias recognized the cadence. Multiple footfalls, heavy yet coordinated. Whatever hunted them was not a single monster, but a gathering force. He settled behind the rifle, its weight grounding him like an anchor in the storm. Snow gathered on his shoulders as he aligned the weapon toward the densest cluster of shadows. The squad formed a crescent around him, every pair of eyes trained on the splitting tree line. A chorus of guttural roars erupted, shaking loose sheets of frost from the branches. 3 silhouettes emerged, each smaller than the first beast, but still towering, their armor glinting with the same heat-dispersing sheen. The creatures moved with unnerving precision, spreading out as though tracing the squad's formation. Panic threatened to unravel the platoon, but Elias's voice cut through it before it took hold. "Remember what you saw," he said. "Plasma annoys them, nothing more. But distraction matters. Keep them turning. I'll take them down when you give me the angle." Core fired first, a sharp burst that forced one creature to pivot. Rythis darted between boulders, launching controlled volleys that lured another beast into exposing a softer joint. The Vril gunners focused their barges on the third, drawing it forward in a lumbering charge. It wasn't elegance or overwhelming firepower that coordinated their movements. It was trust earned in a single impossible moment. Elias tracked the closest creature, waiting for the exact instant the overlapping plates separated mid-stride. He fired once, the rifle's thunder rolling across the ridge. The target collapsed, skidding into a drift. He pivoted, chambered another round, and eliminated the second with a precise shot through its exposed flank. The third creature, enraged and wounded, barreled toward Rythis, but the scout dove aside just as Elias's final round smashed through its throat, silencing it with brutal finality. Silence fell again, heavier than before. The squad stared at the fallen beasts, their breaths fogging in slow, disbelieving waves. Elias rose, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders, and glanced toward the distant valley where the horizon rippled faintly with movement. "This ridge won't hold," he said, "but we can make them remember what humans bring to a battlefield." Rythis straightened, Core nodded, and even the stoic Vril gunners seemed to stand taller. As fresh tremors rolled toward them, the squad tightened their formation, not around fear, but around purpose, and prepared to follow the old human into whatever came next.